Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hi everyone, welcome back again to NPTEL online certification course on research methodology for planning and architectural studies. In continuation to our last lecture discussion where we discuss in detail the observation based data collection, its advantages and disadvantages. With the same line, today we are going to discuss another data collection method, but it will be focused on perception based data collection, and obviously there will be certain differences. There are certain advantages over observation data collection in case of participation based or perception based data collection. Along with that, there are certain drawbacks that also we will be discussing. So, with that, let us start our today's lecture, lecture number 27, methods of data collection part 2. So, in this particular lecture, what we are going to learn? So, again we will learn about the perception based data collection, different data types in perception based data collection, types of data collection in that way, that which includes in this particular basket of perception based data collection. Then we will be discussing about the advantages and disadvantages, and finally we will summarize our understanding out of perception based data collection. Now, methods of data collection, earlier we talked about observation based. So, there was certain kind of concern about how to understand the motivation behind the action of any subjects. It is just mere observation. There were certain kind of biases, maybe from observer side or maybe the participants or the subjects, that in that case the subjects they may get biased or they may get alert in presence of observer. So, in particular case, how we can overcome it, let us understand. Perception based method are essential part of data collection process, and there is no exception in architecture and urban planning. It is must. Whenever you do any sort of building design, or it may be a case of urban design problem, or maybe it is something like the planning, as because the space will be used by the users. So, it is very important to understand their perception for those kind of spaces. If we can get them into confidence and if we can incorporate their desires, their expectation and other thing, so probably the plan or the design that we deliver will have certain kind of belongingness to them, and then that may work in a better way. So, in this case, the perception based data collection focus on understanding how people perceive their physical environment and how these perceptions influence their experience and interaction with the spaces. So, say for example, like in many cases nowadays in architecture we talk about the sense of fear. So, especially like when you are walking at midnight and then maybe all the shops are closed, or there are something like the light, the illumination is not proper. So, there is a sense of fear. Okay. So, that may be improved through some kind of change in illumination, or maybe certain activities that can happen at that particular time. So, it is just about altering the space. Certain characteristics can change the perception and can give confidence that okay, I can really work. So, there is no issue to work on at night or maybe late evening. Unlike quantitative method, which normally seeks some kind of objective measurement where you can quantify, perception based approaches normally delve into the subjective and qualitative aspect of human experience. So, in this particular case, mostly we try to get those kind of information in a qualitative manner, but again in this case we can do the perception survey in terms of some quantification, where we ask the question in that way. Say when I say that how comfortable you are, so in this particular case the perception based answer can be okay, I am comfortable, or I can say that okay, what is the weather today. So one may say that it is very hot, very cold. This is something very qualitative. The other day we discussed about it as well. But the moment like we try to record those information, like maybe with the thermometer and all, we can identify that okay, very cold means yes, obviously now it's 4 degree, 5 degree in a particular area, so it's definitely a cold one. But at the same time, if I ask that okay, what is your income, or like what is your age, so those kind of information again we are taking in a participation. But in that case, like whenever we get those information, they are of a quantitative nature, but here we are going to observe their perception. So mostly the perception part is qualitative in nature. So let us understand this difference. One is perception based survey, other is the participation based survey. So in this case we should not get confused between the word participation and perception. So participation, where they can participate and they can also fill up some quantitative information, but perception mostly it is very much subjective and qualitative in nature. Now coming to this aspect, that perception is a process by which individuals interpret and understand the sensory information. And if we take the example of built environment, it can be visual perception, it can be auditory through sound, it can be tactile or olfactory, where even something can be with the aroma and the smell. It may be some kind of expectation and the experiences. Now many a times we try to capture the experience in this kind of perception based survey. And if we try to understand its relevance or importance in architecture and planning, definitely it is very important, because perception shapes the way individuals use and interact with spaces. It also influencing their behavior and sense of well-being. So if a space is very clean, neat, all of a sudden using that space, the revisiting intention to that space will increase. But if you have a very bad experience, you will never go back to that. Say I quote another example from transport planning perspective, that if you have used a public transport in some city and if your experience is very good and you found that okay, that the cost was definitely, the fare was the lowest among all alternatives, as well as it was very comfortable. I used to, like in your experience maybe you can share that okay, I could easily get a seat and it was comfortable, it was also air conditioned, and then it was also like reliable, it was not getting delayed. So that can portray someone, whenever you share this story to someone, so one may have that kind of expectation and certain kind of perception about public transport. Now you change it. Now suppose you experience something very bad, that okay, in a particular public transport, that it was very crowded and probably like it's very hard to get a seat, even you get it, it is not very clean, and at the same time within that there was issue that some pickpocketing happened with you. So then that will make certain impression about the system, and then if you share this, even somebody who have not experienced it can develop certain expectation and something about that transport mode, which really make a lot of difference in some kind of decision making. So it is very important. Architects and planners use perception based data to create environments that are not only functional but also emotionally engaging and responsive to the human needs. Even if we take a small building design, so in that case also we try to take the perception of the clients, that okay, probably the clients had certain imagination, certain expectation within that particular space, and with the different alternation of the forms and then all the space and then the interrelationship among them, you can bring out something which can meet their expectation. That is what normally the architects they do. Similarly, for the planner, if you identify through perception that what are the challenges or main aspect of this, maybe the infrastructures, maybe the other overall ambience of any particular urban open space. So, you can work on that and you can bring those changes, the positive changes where the people shared with you during that perception based study, right. So, this is something is very important. Now, as I already mentioned that in perception based survey we can have mostly the qualitative kind of data. So, which will be much more in descriptive nature, the conceptual in nature, and then focusing on understanding why and how behind what is observed. So, in last lecture I mentioned that in such cases like mostly what is happening that can be observed very easily, but why and how this is some kind of motivation behind that kind of action can only be captured in this particular perception based survey. It is collected through methods like it can be through one-to-one interview, it can be a focus group discussion and case study that we have already discussed earlier. This data type is invaluable when exploring perception, emotion and the experience related to the space and place. So, this is very important, sometimes it is become obvious to understand their perception, unless otherwise we may come up with some kind of design and then that may fail. Even if for the product design aspect and all. So, nowadays all of us we are using different electronic gadgets, like starting from the wearables device like the smartwatch or the smartphone or maybe the earbuds, etc. So, in all those cases definitely each and every small aspect, whether it may be the sound quality, whether it may be the color, whether it may be the battery aspect or maybe the way it is being packed. So, everything matters a lot to the users, and then based on their expectation, their experience, past experience of bad and good, that may help designer to come up with more user friendly devices. And that is why like you say that each day you are getting certain addition to those kind of technology. Similarly, in aspect of architecture and planning, perception survey is very important and we should understand the type of research that you are aiming at, some perception to be captured. So, definitely you should look into it that these are the advantages of perception survey and then you can take it up. Now, in this case definitely there are certain kind of quantitative data which is numerical and aims that what, where, when. So, those kind of phenomena, and in such cases you can capture those experience that in terms of some kind of quantifiable. In this case the method may include the close-ended questionnaire where you can give options and one has to answer, that we have discussed in the questionnaire design lecture. Then the counting, and then you can also use some kind of statistical model to analyze those data. It provides a broad overview and it is essential for generalization and predicting trend of those kind of results. Now, types of questions to ask. So, here we have to be very much careful while designing the questionnaire, what type of questions that we ask. So, in this case in that data collection process, if you go for a scaled question that that we discussed about different scale like ordinal, interval, then also we have discussed about Likert, then semantic differential scale, etc. So, if you use those kind of case, so it about certain features. So, say for example, on a scale 1 to 5, how do you rate comfort of sitting in a lobby? So, it is all about a qualitative data, but giving certain sort of scale where it is one may lead to something very much discomfortable, or 5 means is very much comfortable, or maybe in between there will be a neutral point, or else it is not a neutral point, is actually some kind of unipolar scale where you just measure a degree of comfort. So, 1 is very low and the 5 is very high in that manner. Now, open ended questions to capture detailed perception and narratives. So, in many cases, like whenever as researcher, as we have discussed earlier as well, that if you go for certain kind of open ended questions, you may get more insight about the true feeling and perception of the user, okay, or whom you are asking the questions about any particular subject, rather than just pinpointing about like, okay, do you have this idea and give certain options. So, maybe as a researcher we may fail to make those options exhaustive. So, in such cases open ended questionnaire can be useful and can be a good method of data collection, but to summarize them you may have a variety and diversity of those answers, and then probably controlling all of them and making certain kind of conclusion out of those narratives is not an easy task. But as researcher, definitely you can always do that, even if it is challenging, but it can bring out certain kind of very useful information. So, that you can always do. So, say for example, what are your thoughts on the natural lighting in this workspace? So, it is just something that you just ask the users to say this natural lighting of this workspace. You are not giving any options. Like if you make and convert this to a question of close ended, in that case you can say that it is very effective, it is less effective or something, you can give a scale, but here you are not giving any scale. So, you just can get certain text as answer, and then from some kind of text mining or certain kind of qualitative analysis you can bring out those kind of useful information. The other type can be scenario based question to understand the preferences. For example, if you had to choose between more green spaces or more sitting areas in a courtyard, which would you prefer? So, you are giving a condition. So, in this case it is making a trade off between different scenario or choices that are made. So, say for example, like it is something like, I give you a different example in this aspect. Say I just would like someone to know the preference, his or her preference on having certain kind of uh, tea or coffee. So, I can simply ask, what would you like to have now? So, it may be open ended, one may say I can have like coffee, tea or simple water or maybe cold drinks, or else I just give this in an option that out of tea, coffee, what would you prefer? Or else it may be a direct question, would you like to have coffee? So, actually in all these cases we are asking about certain preferences to take some drink, but in one case I am having direct question that would you like to have coffee, other is would you like to have coffee or tea, we are giving options and then one may select. The other one is that there you can give multiple options and then you can pick up. So, in such cases all these choices to be made in that way. So, here the question, if I repeat again, it is the questions about about a particular space where the person would like to have more green space or more sitting areas, because if we provide more sitting areas probably you have to curtail the green space, and if you want to increase that and if you want to not disturb that green space more, the sitting area which is like a man made one. So, obviously sometimes you can use the green space or the field for sitting purpose, but many a times it can hamper the overall landscape. So, this is something scenario based. Now, this can be image based question where respondent react to visual stimuli. This is again very important aspect and many a times we are using it nowadays. So, it is showing different building facade design and asking for preferences. So, that means suppose it is something like probably you have done it before, like, or you have observed like maybe someone to do that color of a particular wall. So, there is a color plate and then out of that you just select which color to be picked up. So in such cases, like definitely it is some color card that earlier we used to do, but now there are different softwares where the color you pick and you put up some image with those kind of augmented reality and virtual environment, you can also see those changes in almost real time. That if you select this color, it will be like this after making that paint and all. So you can take a informed decision that okay, let us go for it. So those kind of thing, you can experiment, or else you just make a scenario that okay, this is some of design 1, this is design 2, this is design 3, but all of them are making certain sort of functions. So which one you are liking most? So then those kind of things can be picked up. So in that kind of case also you can provide the image. Even in some cases you can use the video clip to present the scenario. Those animations can be used. So maybe especially in architecture for the building or maybe site, the animation plays a crucial role. So earlier it was like a physical model, but now with help of all these technologies and very beautiful rendering softwares that are available in market, you can also go ahead with that, where you also can capture the information through those. So I think that is also very important if your research demands such kind of tool to be used, where image based scenario we can present to capture the perception, you should do it. Okay. So coming to the advantages of the perception based data collection, it will help to get a rich qualitative insight. As because you are capturing perception and mostly try to understand that why those kind of things are happening and how they perceive. So in such cases it is giving you very in-depth rich quality data. It will also give you some kind of contextual understanding. It is not just the observation, but also you know the reason in that case, and that is something as researcher you want to explore. So this will give some kind of contextual understanding. In-depth exploration can happen, and it will all depend on the type of method that you are going to adopt, like whether it is showing some sort of pictures to understand, or throwing some kind of closed structured questionnaire giving some options, or else it is something like you go for an open ended narrative based question. So based on that you can get it. So say for example, if you try to understand something new, the area is very new and probably you do not have very structured questionnaire. So to start with, to explore this particular new field of research, you can go with the open narrative based questionnaire as well. And in this particular case, definitely you can take those kind of perception one to one. It can be in a focus group or it can be a panel. It has flexibility, as I already mentioned, that you can select the way you want to go for it. It can be open ended, it can be structured, it can be also like scenario based, or it can be also can go for the image, or you can say video clips as some sort of scenario. So normally for futuristic scenario, like where you do not have any existing thing available, so for such kind of research you can take help for such kind of imagination and create certain kind of real look like environment to present as an alternative, so that one may have a choice. So such kind of image based questionnaire are nowadays popular, but there are certain kind of argument as well, like whenever you create certain kind of image based thing, so you may also give some kind of biasness. You can give something like the way you picked up the photograph, the existing one, you can just defame the existing thing and you just portray that okay, this is the base scenario. So as researcher you have to be neutral. Whatever is the true scenario at present condition and what could be the potential scenario or a better scenario, it should be much more acceptable, within acceptable range. You should not abruptly change all the parameters and bring something which is probably, theoretically everything is right and practically probably it will not be possible. So in such cases, like, you have to be careful about choosing of those kind of images. Then in this particular case, the advantage is that it is participant centric. So directly we are involving with the participant. So there is no such kind of communication gap, that there is no error of observing and anticipating that reason. Here we are going to capture the reason. For exploratory research for a new field, it is very good to start with. Cultural sensitivity, this is again something, where when you want to capture the perception, you can involve different user group, different kind of geographically spread group, and then try to get their perception and then bring out certain kind of heterogeneity and homogeneity among their perception to bring certain kind of informed decision. Subjective experiences can be captured, definitely in this case this is the advantage, and also it is dynamic in nature. What is dynamic means here in this case, that its perception can also depend on the other factors, the mood. Say for example, like if today, like I was, like, say for example, for some reason I am disturbed with that particular certain activity, or maybe there was certain kind of pressure for certain reason. So maybe if somebody interact with me, so that reflection of those kind of stress or maybe any extra pressure can be expressed in my answers. So that is something it may change, or else the given scenario, suppose with the current scenario or prevailing scenario about the market rate and other part. So maybe people are very happy with the product price, or maybe the fare of say any particular public transport, but maybe after some time, because of increase in something fuel cost and other thing, if that will change, okay, that may also change the perception, because now with the prevailing condition I may say that okay, this is good, but there is no guarantee that all the parameters will remain same tomorrow. So in such case also, like, the perception may change. Then I may find that okay, the fare of the public transport is probably is very high. So it's all depend on that. So if we go for a longitudinal data collection, that we are capturing the similar phenomena in the similar group of people, and then over time, so in that case we can capture the perceptual difference and temporal difference over time, temporal difference in perception among the users. So it may be like depending on the mood of the users, as I already quoted. Suppose if I am disturbed for some reason and then I am having certain stress for something, in that case probably my answer will be different compared to, like, when suppose I don't have any other things, I am very much joyful. In such cases probably my answer will be different. So like that, whenever you are capturing information from users, their base level condition you may not know, and then probably there might be some sort of dynamic impact. So this is something can be captured through this perception survey, and in that case you have to do the longitudinal survey. Now with all those advantages, it also has certain disadvantages. Say subjectivity and bias. So definitely whenever we are getting any information, that is much more subjective, and there might be some sort of bias which may not be the true case. Lack of objectivity, definitely when subjectivity increases, the objectivity can reduced in this case. So based on only perception, taking a decision sometimes will be also difficult. Say if I just express that okay, this particular room is now very cold, and then probably that particular is just my perception, because probably I am having certain kind of fever kind of feeling or something, that's why I am feeling it. So it's a prevailing condition which may tell that even if the temperature is moderate or it is comfortable to other participants, but for me it is cold. So, this is some kind of subjectivity which cannot be measured. So, objectivity into this is the temperature. You know that in a normal scenario that maybe probably 25 degrees or maybe 27 degrees, that is something comfortable, but within that if somebody is feeling too hot or maybe somebody is having the sweat and then express it, so there might be some other issues as well. So, that is something is a lack in the perception based observation. Difficulty in verification. So, definitely it is something that they state that how to verify that that is their internal behavior. So, unless otherwise we go for certain kind of sensory detection, probably it will be very tough to do. It can be also influenced with the external factors that already I have mentioned. So, that was some kind of lack, that how we can change. So, one thing is the dynamic behavior which can change with environment, but that brings into the influence of external factors. Whenever we intercept that particular person, what other factors that are controlling in their answers. In this case again it is something that as because the objectivity is less, so it is having a limited quantifiability of those options. Interpretation challenges, especially if you go for open ended questionnaire, so then there will be issue, because then interpreting their narratives is difficult, and then collate it and bring out a concrete solution or a comprehensive solution which can fit all results is difficult. It is something if you go for some kind of memory recall type question, that based on your experience you share the idea. So, it all depends on memory recall, that what happened in that particular trip and then I express it, it is difficult. Where the observation survey plays a crucial role, because that is happening at the real time. You do not need to have those kind of recall memory burden to you, because many a times you ask this kind of question. So, based on your last experience, can you share what happened? So, it depends on, and there is a biasness. Suppose if someone is very good at recalling and then can give you the true scenario, or one may can synthesize something and then maybe manipulate or maybe unable to answer. So, that are the challenges for the perception based survey. It is also like requiring resources, because there will be more trained interviewer who can ask the questions in a better way, then obviously training interviewers and also it will be really resource intensive. There is some kind of limited control over different variables. So, different aspect, as I say that one perception may be governed by multiple variables. So, if you intend to capture only one, so maybe you missed out others. So, for such kind of cases, like even for such kind of perception based information, we have to really take that challenges, that there might be some kind of assumptions under certain condition that they are responding. Okay. So, like that for the intended user that I would like to survey for my research, that should be very well formulated, and accordingly this particular perception based survey to be conducted. Now, to summarize this particular lecture, so we have discussed about the perception based survey, how it is important in the field of architecture and planning, how user perception can play crucial role to bring out some user friendly design or planning. Different types of perception that we have discussed in this particular lecture, then types of different type of data collection, in this case like something qualitative, quantitative or both, and then we discussed in detail the advantages and disadvantages. Now, if you ask me the question that what should be the right method, what should be a better method for any research in planning and architecture, observation or perception based survey. So, answer is not straightforward. Definitely depending on your research need, you have to take a call. Maybe you require both or maybe you require only one. In all the cases, like there are certain sort of biases, there are certain sort of drawbacks. So, those assumptions to be made very clearly when you are stating your survey design and also the results. So, if you can do it in that way, in a sincere way, so then probably there will be no issue. So when we'll be discussing a series of case studies with application of all this perception based survey or observation based survey, things will be little more clear than this. Hope these are clear to you and you are getting good insight for your research objectives or your research work at whatever stage you are. And I hope that all these lectures and the previous discussions help you to clear certain doubts. Even if you have certain doubts, please write in the forum so that we can interact more and we can clear your doubts with my best possible capacity, right. With that, we end this particular lecture here. So with that, we will move forward to our next lecture, the final lecture on this particular topic of methods of data collection part 3, and there we will be discussing about the expert based survey, which is also something very important and mostly used in our planning and architectural studies and research. So, we will be discussing the advantages, disadvantages, the way we have discussed the previous two. So, we will be meeting in our next lecture. Till then, thank you, bye bye.